There's gold in them there hills. This is the story of a gold mine at Rodalquilar in Almería province. In 1864, prospectors found gold in the caldera of a long extinct volcano in the Cabo de Gata in Almería province. Word spread and a mini gold rush brought hopeful miners to the area. The village of Rodalquilar sprang up almost overnight, and some of the original miners' housing is still standing. The village is actually in the centre of the caldera. The caldera formed about 11 million years ago, and you have to use your imagination. Here was a volcano. It was erupting. It threw a cubic kilometre of magma, molten rock, into the atmosphere. The chamber emptied, the magma chamber under the volcano emptied, and this whole valley collapsed, all within a few hours. It must have been magnificent. The caldera is an oval shape, 8 kilometres from east to west and 4 kilometres from north to south. The remaining magma, trapped a few kilometres below the surface, released hydrochloric and sulfuric acids that were then pushed towards the surface through cracks in the rock above. The acids dissolved all sorts of minerals, including gold mixed with lead and silver, that were trapped within the rock. Those minerals crystallised out in fissures close to the surface. Until 1914, the ore was loaded into esparto grass panniers. It was then brought from the mine down to this beach here at El Piezo, which is a distance of about 3 kilometres, by donkey cart. From here, it was loaded into small ships that anchored in the bay, and it was sailed to Cartagena and Mazaron. At Cartagena and Mazaron, the foundries extracted the silver, leaving an amalgam of lead and gold. This amalgam was then shipped all the way to Antwerp, where the gold was extracted from the lead. Now, the mine owners weren't really interested in the gold, they really wanted the lead and the silver. So the value of the gold was assessed at Cartagena, and the miners received that value as payment for their work, minus 25% for transport costs. In 1915, gold was discovered in free form, and the miners Auriferous de Rodalquilar set up their own amalgamation plant. They ran into problems because the miners had a habit of heating the ore prior to it being crushed. Now, whilst that makes the ore easier to crush, it does put a deposit on top of the amalgam through which the mercury used in the next process cannot penetrate. So very little gold was actually extracted. Within 12 months, the Minas de Auriferous de Rodalquilar had gone to the wall. In 1929, the Germans arrived with a similarly named company, Explotación y Minas de Rodalquilar. They were convinced that they could improve on the amalgamation process. Within 12 months, they had failed. The following year, 1930, a British company, Minas de Rodalquilar SA, took over the mine. They introduced new extraction processes. They replaced the donkeys with lorries, and they started to use explosives in the mine. They introduced a cyanization process, which was new at that time, and they were actually able to make a profit and ran it successfully for a number of years. All went well until 1936, when during the Spanish Civil War, the syndicalists came over and took over the mine. The syndicalists were the equivalent of the trade unions in the UK. Now, Franco had introduced a system whereby the price of gold was fixed, and the state could be the only customer for the gold produced in Spain. The mine immediately started to make a loss. A state-owned mining company called Adaro took over the mine in 1943, and they tried to bring it into profit by massively increasing the production and by introducing a second cyanization plant called the Denver. Unfortunately, bad management, state control and a fixed price for gold meant that the mine never actually made a profit. By 1966, the mine was exhausted, both financially and figuratively. That would have been the end of the story if it hadn't been for a Dutch company called Cymet that turned up in 1989. They had a new leaching process, and the idea was that they could take all the spoil that was extracted from the mines prior to 1966, leach it, and extract the gold that was still left in the spoil. Unfortunately, they had an output of something like 200,000 tonnes of ore per year. They couldn't compete with mines such as those in Peru that were producing up to 350,000 tonnes per day. The miners left Rodalquilar and their homes started to crumble. From a peak in the 1930s of about 1,000, the population fell to almost zero. It is only in the last few years that visitors to the area saw an opportunity. The small nucleus of renovated white cottages are mainly holiday accommodation, with a few artisan shops and cafes open during the summer. Hopeful amateur prospectors still come up here, and occasionally they do find a little bit of gold in the gold-bearing ore. We're at the northern edge of the caldera, looking down into one of the small valleys that form the rim. Behind me is the Cerro del Cinto, which is where the first gold was found at the back end of the 19th century. And down in the valley there, next to one of the adits, you can see some of the mine workings. You never know. One day, Rodalquilar will have another gold rush.